So in the last video I did a pretty dreadful unboxing on the actual rewind tool that I'm using for this job. So I'm just going to simulate doing that again so you can actually see it this time. So it's the KATSU brand. I've had it at Amazon. I am going to stick a referral link in the description because I'm really happy with this. The actual box it comes in itself is a nice blue ABS box. Very easy to use, very small and compact, very lightweight. That's going to sit out of the way when I'm not using it, but it's also going to keep all the components in place when I do need to use it. So as you can see, when I actually first unboxed it, some of these components were loose, but they're all quite nicely held in place. And what I discovered is it's a very simple mechanism. You just slide them up to get the parts out, pull them back and just slide them back home again. And that's really secure. What I've needed for this job is that piece there, which is labelled F on this tool for the opal or voxel parts, so that fits my insignia. I presume it's also exactly what you need for a Corsa and Astra, all the common voxel makes. You get two sides to a rewind tool. You get the right hand side and left hand side. What I found is that actually all of my rear calipers on both sides have wound in clockwise, so I've used the right hand thread for that. So I've just needed the right hand tool to do that. And as you can see, it's pretty well machined. I'm pretty happy with that. It's got a decent knuckle on the end, so you can use that to kind of clamp it down. And what you do is you have a backing plate, again quite hard to get out, so that's always going to stay secure. Backing plate goes over the tool itself, and that sits on the inside of one side of the caliper. That's pushing up against the actual piston itself, and as you rewind in, it's putting the pressure on the back plate, so it's pushing against that, pushing it forward. Really useful. What I did find is just to undo it, you just need to get, in my case, a crescent wrench or a multi-spanner. So yeah, I just use that just to take the pressure off, so I could just give it a couple of winds back like that, just to decompress that and get the whole unit back out. In terms of storage, it collapses down pretty quickly and easily. Not much to it. Go back in there like that. Don't have to fully wind it back, but just a few turns just to get that back in the box. Everything's fine. So I've got the right hand side tool, I've got my backing plate there, and I've got component F. Component F goes onto the tool like that. It's magnetised, so that stays on. And then what I want to do now is get the actual rewind tool onto there. Eventually I'm going to get enough space, enough clearance to get the backing plate in, but right now I don't need it. It's going absolutely fine by hand. Well, that's not very good. So the magnet failed me there. Back on now. And you can see the actual seal isn't jumping up, it's not moving. When you get the backing plate on, this becomes a bit easier because it's all going to locate a bit better. Right now it's a little bit freehand. Couple more turns, I should be able to get that plate on. Okay, let's give that a go. Being really careful not to let the caliper hang by its own weight. Just makes the job a little bit fiddly, but saves a tear in your brake line, and I know you'd rather a fiddly job than no tear. Do you know, I'm not quite there yet, I don't think. This seal's not going to be far off locating by the time I get the backing plate on. Okay, let's get that up. There we go, we're in. Right, so the key to these backing plates is I just want to unwind to get the tension onto it, and then that becomes, it's not quite evenly on actually. Okay, that's better. And then this becomes an easier one-handed operation. And I just keep rotating this home to push the actual caliper back. Every now and then you need to just tighten up this bolt to keep the backing plate in place. You can see the caliper seal now is folding back on itself the correct way, so that's a good thing. And this is working absolutely fine. There's no grit or friction or resistance. It's turning nice and easily. Using the right tool makes the job a lot easier rather than trying to figure out some kind of way of getting pressure onto that caliper. Okay, so I'm going to over tighten it. There we go, so that's all looking quite flush now. Just want to give it one more nip up, because there's nothing worse than trying to reassemble your brakes and realising you have to go back a couple of steps. I want to ease the tension off on that. So I'll just get a little spanner now to do that. There we go, we've got the piston back in, the new seal on, all ready to rock and roll for the next stage of the assembly. In terms of initial thoughts on this, it's worked really well, to be honest. Very happy with that. The thing I would say is I dropped this into the brake fluid reservoir a couple of times. There are a couple of magnets on it that locate. They're okay. Now, it's not coming off easily, but if you do catch it, then it's got the potential just to knock it and come off. Particularly on the one side was slightly more rusted. I'd have to clean it a bit more, and as a result these little locating pins were slightly loose, or actually where they locate I should say was slightly loose, because I've cleaned out the rust, and so that just encouraged that to wobble, and under a bit of pressure that did come off a couple of times. Not a big problem, but just have something to fish it out the brake fluid with, so I use some pliers and then some blue roll just to clean it off. Everything's fine. Yeah, really happy with that. There was a little bit of surface rust on that tool there, so that's not great. I'll do something about that. I'll give it a little wipe with some fine wet and dry. But yeah, really happy with that. For about 25 quid or so, I think it's well worth. If you're going to do this job, you have to have this. I think it's worth having in the toolkit if you're going to do basic mechanical work on your own cars, because, you know, at the end of the day, this job's been a bit more involved than I set out to be. Having the right tools on hand is one less thing to worry about. So it's a win for KATSU. Other brands are available, but I will put a link in the description box down below if you want to get this model.